Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Loki Season 2 finale, or maybe just Loki finale. We won't know until Marvel makes a decision, which at the time they haven't officially made any decision, but a fantastic episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I don't always talk about it, but I wanted to make note of it this time. I love what they did with the credits where they started off with the Marvel Studios. I was like, they're going to rewind it, aren't they? And I was like, of course you're going to, because of the nature of this episode. So, we have Loki. We're picking up where everything left off last episode with Loki coming back to when Victor Timely gets spaghettied. So they go through it again, and Loki's like, all right, so what did we do wrong? Oh, we didn't do it fast enough. So Loki goes back, and we kind of get the time loop shenanigans I was kind of hoping for. It's like, all right, let's do it again. Loop and loop and loop and rewind, trying to get it right each time. There was one time that we saw of the montage, Victor actually made it a little further before he spaghettied. So it's just like little by little. I even love at one point Loki tried to go back in time to talk to Miss Minutes and Renslayer when they had him captured. It's like, Miss Minutes, I know you're mad at us right now, you're hurt, but I need your help with the whole multiplier situation. And all of them in the room it's X5, Timely, Renslayer, Miss Minutes, all just staring at him. I'm like, I love this shit. I love the timey-wimey shenanigans. It's so good. It's like, it's just fun. Just pure fun, and I love it. And just everyone's thinking Loki's crazy when he's bringing up all this stuff because he's rewinding so much. And they're like, wait, what do you mean we're doing this again? And just like, no one knows what Loki's really doing. So I love him just like going back even further and let's try at an earlier time. Nope, that still didn't work. Well, let's go back even further. So it's like, oh, and he rushes to Ouroboros, and Timely me is like, Ouroboros, this is Timely, this is Ouroboros. Oh, he learned from your book, but the book you wrote, you learned from him. Oh, isn't that great? Hey, this is Ouroboros' model. It's like, oh, Loki, that's not really good. No, it's great, Ouroboros. And he's explaining the whole thing, and everyone's just sitting back, and he's just like running through it because I've been through this like 1,000 times. So yeah, let's do it again. And he even went as far as ask, because they tried to do it earlier and it still didn't work. So Loki was like, okay, so Ouroboros, how long would it take you to teach me to learn all this stuff? And it's like a century. So we skip to Loki repeating this for a century or so. A few centuries, and eventually nails it. And it's like, all right, let's do this. I know exactly what to do. He's keeping up with Casey and OB in the conversation. I was like, oh man, this is so dope. Time travel shenanigans. And it's like, all right, Victor, let's do it. Oh, before you do this, Victor, make sure you do this, and this. And do not put the multiplier down because it will fall off the railing. So do not. Also latch down. Make sure you tape this and the goggles because you don't want your skin getting ripped off of you. So that means there's sometimes he didn't get spaghettified, but it's just that his skin got ripped off. That's really depressing to know that. But yes. So this time it's like, is it going to work? Is it going to work? And I love Loki. Like, yeah, you're there one step at a time. Oh my God, you're doing so good. He's so calm while he's giving instruction. Makes sense. You've given it God knows how many times at this point in time. So it's like, all right, just keep going. Be brave. And then like Timely gets to the end and the button doesn't work. I was like, are you shitting me? He's like, just hit it again. Sometimes it gets stuck and he hits it again and it works. It's like, come on back, Timely. Come on back. And he makes it back. I was like, no. I was like, there's no way this is going to end all honky-dory. There's no way. There's too much time left on the clock. Literally the episode, I think at that point, we weren't even halfway to the episode. I'm like, what's going to happen next? Like, it can't all work out. But it's like, oh, the ring is expanding. All the timelines are fitting. I'm like, yeah. And then it kept expanding. The problem is the ring's expansion doesn't compensate. The fact is that the timelines are like rapidly doubling at the rate that it's going to be expanding into infinity and beyond. And there's no way to compensate for that. They cannot create anything that could go on for eternity to compensate for all the new timelines. So the loom is doomed to fail. And my immediate thought, and this ties into the overarching theme of the episode, especially with this, is that means when it's all said and done, this was a losing war from the beginning. It's like, yeah, the moment we killed He Who Remains and set this in motion, this was always going to be the end result. Which, because I thought it's like, wait, are we going to go back to like, we're going to have to start pruning timelines again if that's going to be the case? But it's like, no, we can't do that because we're past, like, we're killing billions of people. We can't be like genociding timelines anymore now. With, not everyone was going to agree with something like that. Obviously, with all the growth that the TVA made, especially B-15 leading the charge in that capacity. So it's like, what do you do? What do you do in that regard? So I was curious to see what Loki was going to do. And so what does he do? He rewinds back to season 1's finale before Sylvie can kill He Who Remains. And that turns into a whole rewind shenanigans of like, okay, got to do this over again. Especially when Sylvie says the lines of, you're going to have to kill me. And it's like, will Loki have it in him to kill her? Because this actually kind of flows neatly into the discussion about Infinity War of, we don't sacrifice any lives for the greater good. That was the whole conversation. But, I mean, the sad result is we got Endgame. And how many lives were sacrificed in Endgame? 2. We lost, Gamora obviously dies in Infinity War, and Natasha sacrifices herself for the Soul Stone, and Tony sacrifices himself to wipe out Thanos. So it's like in his army. So the whole notion of like we don't do with sacrifices, that's we're not going to sacrifice even a single life, and kind of having to sacrifice 2 in Endgame. And now you add in like this situation. It's like, is Loki going to have to kill Sylvie? He might not have much of a choice. No matter how much he rewinds back to them in the elevator, it's still, the end result still ends the same. And it's just like, dude. And it's to the point, at one point, he just stops and just lets Sylvie go because he can't kill her, because he doesn't want to cross that line, but he can't even bring himself to go there. And so he ends up talking to He Who Remains, who just freezes Sylvie. He's like, yeah, after all this, so you guess you haven't gotten to the time pausing element. So I'm like, whoa, Loki could do that? So I guess it makes sense. And so they kind of have a conversation. He's like, what'd you expect? Even you time slipping was part, once again, the big question we all had. How much of this was He Who Remains' plan of everything was still on that pathway he carved? And it is. Even Loki time slipping was part of the plan. It's like, no. You thought that this, he's like, what you thought I really was going to let her just kill me? That was going to be R.I.P. WHR? No, HWR, sorry, He Who Remains. But he's like, nope, zip, not like I was really going to let that happen. And just for Loki, it's just kind of like the defeated, just like, right, here we are back to square one, which he said we would be anyway. But I love the reveal where he brings Sylvie back and then like Loki pauses her. He's like, yeah, because we've already had this conversation before. And He Who Remains like, oh, all right. Kind of licks his tongue, puts one on the board for him. He's like, all right, game set. I see you, Loki. I was like, yeah. But it still doesn't change anything, because it's like we're still back to the initial conundrum, because He Who Remains reveals the loom isn't a natural, the TVA gets destroyed, that's a byproduct. It's just kind of like, sacrifices type of thing happens. Like, there's going to be collateral damage. The loom is meant to be a failsafe that the moment it gets destroyed, it destroys all branching timelines. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, because when you think about it, because they made the point, I mean, it was necessary for storytelling purposes because everyone is from a branching timeline. But to find out, that's why they made such a point to let you know, because every timeline last episode that Loki was visiting people in were branched timelines. That's why everything was destroyed. That's why the people, like, why everyone kept getting destroyed too. It's because they were from branched timelines. I'm just like, dude, it's been there in front of us the entire time. And once again, the TVA getting destroyed, just the byproduct of it. But at the end of the day, the loom is meant to destroy. It's meant to be like the atomic response of, oh, there's too many timelines now. Let's nuke them all and only leave the sacred timeline. So we're back to that same conundrum of last season. Cool. You can kill me and let this all play out, but the end result still ends up being the same, of like, you always end up with the loom destroying everything, or you could just go ahead and destroy the loom, Because by destroying the loom, you stop it from blowing up, but all those timelines run rampant, and you got a whole bunch of variants of me, which I even love Loki. Like, are we doing this for my sake or yours? And then He Who Remains just because he doesn't want to go battle with all, because once again, he survived the multiversal war. He's like, you haven't even begun to deal with like the devils that my variants are. I was there. I've been through it. I'm not going through that again. I guess you could almost make the argument He Who Remains is so old that it's like, well, eventually maybe another variant of me will find this result and we'll just kind of once again be back here again. But it's like, right, this is a mercy. It's a terrible thing. Billions of lives will be lost, trillions across all these multiverses, but at the end of the day, you're creating it is out of mercy because you're saving this universe from the multiple me's. So you have to make that choice. Can you kill Sylvie? And Loki going all the way back to episode 1, talking to Mobius when they're having their interview, and Mobius gave him this really interesting conversation about one time there was one person, like, what was it, the Black Sea, there was a variant that was going to kill 5,000 people that weren't supposed to die, but when the time came, Mobius couldn't kill the person because it was an 8-year-old kid, which is very reflective of this first season, where he stopped that agent from killing the kid. Granted, the kid wasn't evil and he wasn't responsible because obviously they were after Sylvie at the time. But he hesitated. Other variants showed up. Agents of the Hunters from the TVA got killed. And it was Renslayer who ultimately ended up making the hard choice. And she had kind of talked about that in like episode 3 or so, where she had talked about maybe it was episode, I want to say it was episode 3 where she was talking about the fact is that Mobius never had to make the hard choices she had. I thought she was just talking about the context of the TVA, which she kind of was, but we learned now that piece of information of what Renslayer did for Mobius. When he couldn't do what was necessary, she did. So it is, and I love that. It's like purpose. Well, I'm going to butcher that line, and it was so good. That basically purpose comes with like a burden. Like purpose, it does involve burden of choice. And it's more burden than it is glory. And the question then becomes it's about what burden you can handle. Like what burden you take upon yourself, and you have to carry that burden and you have to live with it. So the thing is, can Loki kill Sylvie, trying to stop her from killing He Who Remains, so that the sacred timeline continues, but all those other timelines kind of get wiped? Like, what do you do in that situation? And he had that beautiful conversation with Mobius. And I love that. Who did he go to? He went to the one person who knows him better than anyone else. It's like, you understand you are one of my friends, and you're the person I trust to. I love your counsel is the one I seek the most and I trust, because you understand me the most and you'd be able to help me solve it. And even that moment of just him shaking Mobius's hand as he like turns to spaghetti, because once again, it's all catching up, and even in the past, the TVA is getting destroyed in that moment. So Loki ends up going to near the end of last episode, where it's only him and Sylvie left, and he stops time. In fact, he actually kind of rewinds it a little bit to repair the timeline a little bit before it fully spaghettis. And you know what I was wondering about? Because I thought initially when the rings didn't work, I should have said this back then, but when things didn't initially work, I was wondering if it was a byproduct. Because I'm like, there's no way Loki can do all this time slipping and once again, there not be any time-space continuum repercussions. I mean, I guess it's no different from like using the quantum realm to time travel in Endgame. As long as they put all the Infinity Stones back, there were not going to be any branching timelines, so they weren't going to create any issues. They kind of undid all that to some extent, but once again, you were always living in a second timeline because there were always 2 Captain Americas in the timeline. So we were always living in like timeline B, always. But either way, tangents and all that aside, that gets even more crazier when you just think about everything that Loki does. But either way, Loki talks to Sylvie about it, and she's like, well, I'm not going to give you permission to do it. But at the end of the day, for him, it's like, if I don't do this, like, these timelines are going to die anyway, so why not try and protect as much on the sacred timeline? Which for her, it's like, even the sacred timeline isn't great. There's a lot of death and destruction there. It doesn't excuse, like oh, like, this timeline's pristine and utopian. Like, it has its issues too. So are you just going to damn all these other timelines? Are you going to sentence us to death without giving us an opportunity to choose our deaths, to give us an opportunity to fight, you know, and go down swinging? And that really speaks volumes to Loki. Because it is back to being that conversation again that they had in episode 4 of about being gods. You're just going to replace he who remains with yourself. Like, you're just exchanging one person for another. Like, that's not going to change things. We're just going to be repeating history in that regard. And it comes down to, who do you want to be at the end of all of this, Loki? And he ultimately makes the decision of who he wants to be. And I love that he was kind of looking out at his friends, knowing what this meant when he rewound to the loom exploding. So he goes out there, and then, like, his clothes are disintegrating, the horns come up, the outfit change. I'm like, hell yes. And then he ends up using his powers and destroying the loom. And in that moment, all the branch timelines are dying, but he grabs every one of them. I'm like, you're going to become the new loom. You're going to be the battery that charges and keeps all the timelines full of life. You're going to be their eternal battery. It's like, this is the type of God I want to be. And then in that moment, you know, he kind of looks back at everyone, brings all the timelines with him. I was like, dude, and then the throne is forming. I'm like, this is amazing, dude. This is sick. And he sits on his throne, and then it gets the reveal of, like, the tree. I'm like, I'm like, you know, Norse mythology. I'm like, is it supposed to mean, like, he made Yggdrasil? Because Yggdrasil is supposed to be the world tree. And it's like, is it supposed to represent the world's trees? Or just like, because he's basically created, they don't call it anything. Because later posters change of, like, nurturing the timelines or something like that. But it's like, it's the new loom is, I'm assuming, once again, the limited Norse mythology I know, I'm like, that's some Yggdrasil shit right there, which is so interesting. So that's so fascinating. I mean, we already rocked it with Ragnarok, so why not go full Yggdrasil with this and making it, instead of just like the world tree. No, I'm confusing that with isn't that what Yggdrasil's called, the world tree? I think I'm confusing that with Jormungand, the world serpent, like that. Yeah, because isn't Yggdrasil like Yggdrasil's? I mean, I should know. I just beat Dragon Quest XI. If you don't know, Dragon Quest XI has its own Yggdrasil. Oh God. It is like the world, like I said, the phrasing world tree. I feel like I'm confusing that with Jormungand, the world serpent. Either way, it's definitely got to be Yggdrasil. But Loki saved the day, and now it's him just keeping everything going. Because really quickly, I've heard people are referencing, I think it's a specific comic run where Loki goes from the god of mischief to the god of stories. Now, I don't know if that's something, because I've never heard that. Once again, I'm not well versed in Norse mythology. I know a tiny bit here and there over the years, but, just like random research I picked up, stuff I picked up here and there from, like, the Almighty Johnsons, or like some of the God of War stuff. That's about it. And just my own personal research over the years. I'm not that well versed enough in Norse mythology, but I was like, I never remember hearing Loki becoming the god of stories. I mean, I wonder, Loki, no spoilers, but because I've not played God of War Ragnarok yet, but knowing what was set up in God of War, Loki, we'll leave it at that. No, once again, no spoilers for anyone that doesn't know the storylines of the most recent God of War. I don't know if that Loki ever becomes like a Loki of, like, God of stories. Like I said, that's why I'm like, I don't know if that's a Loki thing, or is that specifically a Marvel Loki thing because of a specific comic book run where he becomes the God of stories, which feels very poetic. What is he doing? He's holding on to all these branch timelines. He's giving them life and becomes a God of stories because he's kind of giving birth, like he's holding on and giving life to all these billions of stories across these different timelines. So it's very befitting. And like I said, I love stuff like that because it's like he has his own version of He Who Remains. there's another storyline that's like that. I'm trying to think of where like someone sacrifices himself to be like the centerfold that kind of keeps everything going. There's some reference that's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head that kind of flows in that same vein. It's going to bother the hell out of me that I can't think of it. But now it's like the TVA, you know, continuing. We get Miss Minutes back, which I'm like, hopefully that means we get to see her in the future projects and she won't be her psychotic self anymore. I know that's kind of bumming some people out because some people were loving psychotic Miss Minutes, but sadly it seems like we won't be dealing with that. Maybe, maybe not, because OB was like, I don't know, and just B-15's like, dude, you don't instill me with the most, like, you don't instill me with confidence, OB. And then we had the whole situation with Mobius. He isn't gone forever, but he wanted to take a step out of the timeline because he's going to take Sylvie's advice. He's never seen what his timeline looks like. Because I'm assuming those little gifts that were left behind, like, oh, as requested. Because I guess either he finally, after everything, decided, you know what, I am going to take a look at my timeline because Loki made this sacrifice for us all. He's giving us a chance that I got to see this through. I also love the note of, yeah, none of the Kang variants are aware of our existence yet, which is good because like the one Kang that is aware of you, the one he who remains, the only he who remains, is still dead in this. So the only person who's aware of the TVA amongst the variants is gone, so they would be unaware of its existence because we undid the whole Timely thing, so even he doesn't know. So Victor Timely goes off to live his timeline the way it was meant to, so I'm assuming that just stays on his journey, at least doesn't deviate the way, if it does deviate onto a branch timeline, it's going to be in other ways, not the way it branched out where he'd come and be involved in the TVA and become the next He Who Remains. But I'm wondering, like, was that just Mobius asking, or did, like, Loki kind of give him that last, because OB also gets, like, a new record. I'm assuming Loki maybe jotted stuff down to be like, this, and this happened, like, giving you a full record of everything, so your book is fully complete. I don't know if that's what that is, and I think it's also supposed to play into how when OB was Doug, the bookseller who couldn't get his book, you know, couldn't be a bestseller, kind of can now because no one except for Casey really read it before, or Victor Timely, and now you get to spread it to everyone now because I think everyone will probably be a lot more locked in to it. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if that's a Loki thing or what that's supposed to be. It could easily, the Mobius thing could easily be explained of, after everything, I need to find, I mean, like he said to B-15, I need to find out what we're fighting for. And he goes and sees what his life is like on the timeline. Obviously, he sees, like, I don't know if that's supposed to be him mainline timeline-wise, or is that just him? Because, I mean, he knows what his life is supposed to be, but I don't know if that's like, oh, this is a branch me still there. This is a me before I was taken off the timeline. Maybe that's what that's supposed to be indicative of. Or maybe, like, even on the sacred timeline, that's kind of what his life was going to be. I don't know. I did not even realize this until, because I'd said it at the time that I was like, right, he was taken from the timeline in 2022, so that was during the blip. Michael Vogel, I will give credit for at the Geek Buddies, I didn't even correlate this, that he was like, oh, maybe Mobius's wife got blipped. Like I said it was during the blip, but it never crossed my mind. I just assumed his wife had died. And someone else said, and actually looking back on the dialogue, he's like, with my wife being gone. He never said she was dead. So it's either she left, and like she just literally just got up and left, or she got blipped during the snap. So that was kind of interesting. But Mobius just looking at his life, and, you know, even Sylvie, I guess, will go back to her life. Because even Mobius said, well, what are you going to do next? And she's, I don't know. Once again, I even made a short about this. So many people did not like the way Sylvie kind of rocked this season. But I'm like, the fact of the matter is, this is what she's been aiming for her entire life. She wants peace. She's been a warrior on the run at the ends of thousands of worlds. She'd even said that to Loki, where it's like, oh, right, like, sometimes you just have to break stuff. That's something she's learned watching the ends of so many worlds. But Loki is like, yeah, but you have to break stuff with hope that something better will be put in its place, and that's where Loki came up with the idea of what he did. So, but Mobius decided that, oh, I'm gonna stick around and let time pass, and he's looking at everything. He's like, no, the house is good. It's the best house on the block, and the lawn is just great. So I doubt this is the end. Last time we've seen Sylvie or Mobius, but like they're both probably taking a little step away. But when the time comes, when they're necessary to do what they need to, make sure, because I think that's what the TVA is for. It's not here to monitor every timeline only for the sake of He Who Remains. It's about letting these timelines all have their free will. They allow them to have that free will back. And, B-15's in the war room kind of with everyone else. I guess that whole Judge Doc situation, I guess that still happened timeline-wise. So I guess that didn't get undone, which I thought it might have. I don't know if X5 is locked up again, because the last time you see him, like, chronologically speaking, was after he pruned Renslayer, which still happened, because we find Renslayer in the Void. Now, I was like, well, is Alive still here? And lo and behold, it still is. But it's like, you see that look on Renslayer's face, because this is her first time in the Void, but it's very poetic, because now, for the first time in forever, like, she at least had some mission before him because of He Who Remains and, Miss Minutes and stuff, but now she is completely and utterly alone. She has nothing and no one, and she's sitting on top of what is essentially the TVA logo of like, oh, for all time, always, meaning some version of that was pruned at some point in time. So like maybe that has something to do with the multiversal war situation, like maybe early days of the TVA or something like that. Because it could always be rebuilt type of situation, and maybe it was, but there's still like holes in some of that mythology we don't know. But we do hear the roar and the purple light from Alive. Now, not unless Renslayer is able to ring that back in. That might be the end of Renslayer. I mean, she still exists on the timeline because there's variants of her, but this version of her, the one that fought the multiversal war, I mean, since we're still dealing with all these Kangs, she was monumental in that fight. They didn't show her die, it's implying, but until you see for sure that she's going, like we saw Loki from last season in that episode, Richard E. Grant's Loki, like we saw him get gobbled up by Alive. That was confirmed. Until we see her confirmed dead, that still leaves the door open for her to pop back up, because she could be useful, once again, if we still go down this Kang Dynasty route, because that's still, once again, the real world of it all. Marvel is pivoting and changing things up, so this was great what they've set up here. Hopefully they don't try and like erase all this. Hopefully they do continue to build off of this. It's such a good finale, not just good, a great finale, that is like, you need to continue off of this. You set up some really interesting stuff. And you've also set up, like, the Kang of it all is like, it's in place now. Like, all the Kangs haven't really fully run rampant yet, but at least one's been dealt with because of Ant-Man Quantumania. So, and we know the others are kind of getting revved up at the end of its post-credits. So, hopefully it is whatever their choice may be, whether it is you're going to ride this Jonathan Major wave out. There's a conversation of, oh, we're setting up a Doom thing. It's like, well, it always going to lead to Doom anyway. But I say, personally, if you need to, and maybe it might be, I'm not saying he's guilty, he's not guilty, but there's a lot of allegations against Jonathan Majors, not even just the ones he's going to court for. It's like, it's just, I don't know. If you need to, I would recommend recasting. I wouldn't move away from Kang with all the setup, like, see this through, because I'd love to see this through. I think Kang's an interesting villain. I know that's not the case with everyone. Some people had multiverse burnout. I have not, but, it's like that for some people. I still think it's weird people saying they have multiverse burnout just because all these other things have multiverse. It's like, when you watch a whole bunch of stuff that has that, it's like, you're going to come across like 2 or 3 things that have it, but it's not like everyone in the world is tripping over multiverse stuff. There's no way. Even me being the TV guy that I am, like, yeah, but I'm also a nut for this stuff. I love it. I'm never going to get tired of it. But tangents and all that aside, there's a conversation of it being all confusing. Either way, it's just, you put yourself in a really neat position storytelling-wise, and I'd want to see this continued. So, you're going to get to Doom eventually. Don't rush to it. Just continue down the Kang route. If that means you have to recast, you have to recast. Once again, this is not me being like, oh, that means Jonathan Majors is guilty. He's not guilty. Not even having that conversation because we don't know. I don't even know if his court cases have actually even started yet. Don't they start? Doesn't the trial start this month? I don't know. Just keeping this on the fictitious side of things. Yes, the real world stuff bleeds in, but still. I'm excited to see what happens next. They didn't include anything. Do correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't see anything being like Loki will return because I looked it up. It's unclear yet whether or not there'll be a season 3 of Loki. I mean, we're in uncharted territory because, I mean, we know there's going to be a What If season 2. Probably going to come out maybe early next year. We're still unclear about that. But Loki's the first show out of the gate that's gotten a season 2. So it could be and there was talks about Marvel. I mean, there's a conversation of we don't know whether or not they're going to continue doing TV shows anymore because they're all pulling back heavily. Understandably so. They've been putting out a lot, and whether you liked it or not, I've liked a lot of it. But even I can recognize it's a lot. You're burning out your audience. I'm a nut job. I'm a weirdo. I am a anomaly. I don't speak for the entire Marvel fan base. Me being like, give me more and more and more. That's me. I'm a weirdo. Don't listen to me. The general audience is like, slow the hell down, Marvel. You're pumping out too much, and it's not too good. So there's that conversation. So. It could easily be a thing of this could be like it could just be an end like this. Like I said, this could be the Loki series finale, and the next time we see Loki is during the Kang Dynasty situation. Because I mean, Loki could be the key factor in the Secret Wars of it all. He could be a key role in that. Because there was also the talks about like different characters could end up playing different roles, and certain characters could play a certain role in the comic of Secret Wars that maybe some character from the MCU would more so fit that role because either that character doesn't exist or like characters end up being amalgamations of each other in like adaptations. So where Loki stands, that most likely seems like the next time we would see Tom Hiddleston, not unless he ends up in a post credits of something, but it feels like not unless it's going to be the Marvels. I have not seen the Marvels yet, so I don't know what that post credits is, and I don't want to know. Hopefully I'm able to see it tomorrow. We'll see how things shake out. I feel like if not the Marvels, maybe some other post credits, but I'd assume Kang Dynasty would be the next time we see Tom Hiddleston. Maybe a lot of the TVA as well, because there's also talks about the TVA being involved in Secret Wars as well. It would make perfect sense. So it makes you wonder would they bring the Watcher in there just because of What If? I mean. What if it's kind of standing on its own being animated and stuff, but this kind of it's so interesting where you have the Watcher watching the multiverse, but then you have like Loki being so key to the multiverse. So maybe the argument, how you coincide with those, how you reconcile those, I don't know. Maybe it's just going to be a situation of don't think about it. Let What If be its own thing and let Loki and the MCU be its own thing. Maybe that's all there is to it and you don't have to think too much about it. So I've been rambling, so I do apologize, but I loved this finale, and I'm just so excited to see where things kind of take us going forward from here. I don't know. I'd be interested to see what a Loki season 3 would be, but I would feel like if that was going to ever happen, it would definitely be after a Secret Wars. But that feels like, because Secret Wars is going to be essentially there. I'm only using this example, I'm not trying to say one came before the other because I'm not well versed enough, but it's because I've been through it, because I've watched it live action once, a Crisis on Infinite Earths of everything smashing down into one Earth. That's kind of going to be the end result of like Secret Wars. It's going to be the same thing. So I would assume there wouldn't be a Loki season 3 after that, but closing chapters on the TVA might be included in Secret Wars. Weren't they still deciding whether or not they were going to make that 1 or 2 movies? Because I know Kang Dynasty is supposed to be kind of part 1, but maybe even Secret Wars itself was going to be split. I think there was word about it being split in 2 movies more recently. But once again, we'll just ultimately have to wait to see. Once again, Marvel's still in its restructuring phase too, so a lot of this stuff could potentially change. But for now, I love where we're at, and hopefully we do continue on this path. Whether we have to alter the pathing just the slightest bit or quite a bit just to kind of course correct in a better direction overall. So, but really that's all I want to talk about. Well, before I wrap this up, I want to thank everyone involved in the show. Just in case this ends up being the end retroactively, I want to thank everyone involved in this show, in front of the camera, behind the camera, everyone involved for making this show what it is. This has just been a fantastic ride. I liked season 1 a lot. I loved season 1, but I really loved season 2. Season 2 is just, this show it's fun, and it's everything I love. It's what, without a doubt, when it comes to science fiction, time travel stuff is my jam. I love it. I know some people don't really like it a lot because it can be confusing, but I love it. I get wrapped up in the timey-wiminess of it all. That's why why I love Doctor Who so much, of just the shenanigans of time travel. But that's always one of my favorite storylines of science fiction is time travel. I know it kind of does not work like that for everyone, but yeah, just in general, this show is so much fun, but it's so interesting that you never thought you'd get to see Loki. Like, we saw Loki's growth over the MCU from Thor 1 all the way up to his final moments in Infinity War. You never thought you would have gotten to see Avengers, the first Avengers, Loki, become this person and the journey he's become. And just, if everyone else could see, like, the shock across so many people's faces to realize who Loki is and the person he's become, the growth he's had over the course of the show, the person who did this not for selfish reasons, not to be to have a throne, finding his glorious purpose and giving his friends and everyone a fighting chance in this upcoming multiversal war. It's just beautiful all around. So the cast, crew, writers, directors, everyone involved, who, you know, production wise too, you know, the makeup department, the set department, gotta give a shout out to everyone. Make sure everyone gets some love, you know, for just being a part of this great series. So now, after rambling even more, I think I can finally wrap this up by saying, till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.